Hi guys, it's Stefan here reporting for Stefanzine this afternoon. And today I wanted to obviously cover the news which has emerged on Cristiano Ronaldo, which I'm sure you've all seen by now, reporting that he might be indeed due for a return to Old Trafford and Manchester United. So it always gets us excited, this news. It's not obviously the first time we've seen this emerge in the media, particularly in the close season, so recent close seasons particularly. But this time it seems a little bit more, not so much convincing, but certainly more developed, in that I know it did first emerge in a Portuguese newspaper, I understand, or publication, reporting the news. So not to say that's always more legitimate, but certainly in this case it does appear so. So it's got a lot of us quite excited, particularly if, of course, you are a follower of Manchester United. Now, I just wanted to quickly break down the pros and cons of this prospective return. So first of all, beginning with the pros, now it would of course mark a branding dream for Manchester United by further reinforcing their public profile, which is already massive of course. And I think a good recent example of that and how they sort of leverage or utilise their public profile would be the return of Paul Popper last year. So it would be a similar type of thing in terms of branding. Now you would have seen the hashtag PogBack being run as part of that campaign 12 months ago. So it would mark a similar sort of opportunity to really emphasise or perhaps cast United in a light as if to suggest that they were also responsible for really making Ronaldo or turning Ronaldo into this player, which I guess they probably were, less so in Pogba's case. I know with the whole Pogback hashtag which they ran last year, it did seem a little bit naff for me, and that I think they were trying to really establish that they were responsible as a club for really making Pogba, whereas you could probably argue it was more so Juventus. Now, in Ronaldo's case, though, I think the contrary is true, in that, yes, I think Sir Alex particularly is responsible for really helping Ronaldo push on and become the superstar he is, of course, today. So, from a branding perspective, yes, for Manchester United, I think it's going to be a really good move, if it were to go through, of course. And linked quite closely to that, I think, is the ties, the affectionate ties that he does still hold with the Manchester United fans. And I do think that affinity, that bond, is pretty strong still, as it would appear, at least on the surface. Now, I have heard reports, of course, I don't follow Real Madrid, and to be fair, I don't follow La Liga as closely as I probably ought to, but from what I do understand, in recent seasons particularly, Ronaldo has been sort of cast aside whenever he's not performed. So certain off games, the fans have definitely been quite quick to get on his back, and I think for a player who is, at the end of the day, quite a sensitive person as well, that he would welcome and he would sincerely embrace the collective love of the Manchester United support if he were to return. And just finally with the pros, I think it would be an ideal time to move on at 32 for Ronaldo. Yes, he's playing like a 27-year-old, 28-year-old, but certainly now he is 32. I'm sure he's probably thinking, at least in the back of his mind, well, it might be this summer might be the summer where I make my last big career move, and I don't want to delay that another year longer. So from that perspective, yes, it could be a great opportunity to move on. And just finally, I think he would also galvanise that Manchester United side, which I think, particularly after Zlatan's departure just these last couple of weeks, or last week or so, would be a good thing. I think that side is still quite, it's for me still underperforming. And I think part of that does owe to Mourinho's managerial style, obviously being typically quite defensive, which we'll cover shortly in this video as well, briefly. So I think, yes, he would galvanise that side, but I can't see that sustaining it, or see his influence rather sustaining itself for that long. And the reason I say that, obviously they're back in the Champions League this season, and they'll have a whole lot more fixtures to contend with. So yes, I think initially, perhaps over those first couple of months, if he were to return, so August, September, he'd be a great galvanising influence and everyone would be on board, and the fans obviously will be really chipper at just seeing Ronaldo in the flesh once more at their hallowed turf, Old Trafford. So yes, that would be good initially, but moving swiftly onto the cons now, and the one that really jumps out at, I guess, any of us right away, is that relationship with Mourinho, and that relationship being potentially quite difficult for both parties, particularly Ronaldo. Like I say, I think he is quite sensitive, and there are certainly reports that previously he hasn't always been on the same page as his fellow countrymen. So I can see that relationship being quite tenuous and also quite tedious. for both concerned. And I think by extension, certainly Mourinho's playing style does not help matters. One, typically, like I said, being quite a defensive style, quite a conservative style, which does not suit Ronaldo at all. Albeit, yes, I do believe Jose Mourinho would be quite willing to give his star man a bit more license should the move go through. But again, just on that, briefly, obviously, a lot of people spoke at the end of last season about Paul Pogba being pushed further back over the course of last season, obviously not playing as far forward as perhaps he ought to. And again, for me, that's just directly a reflection of Mourinho's attitude. If I'm frank, yes, we might see that change next season, but I'm not altogether convinced that he's going to be a number 10 as such. And the same could apply with Ronaldo. Yes, he's obviously going to be the furthest forward, or certainly one of the furthest forward. Perhaps you might have Marcus Rashford playing off him or just ahead of him, for example. And yes, he's going to be given. Well, I think he's just going to have free license regardless. If Mourinho permits him that free license to obviously be everywhere like he does so well. But I can just see in the long run they're not going to be on the same page tactically and stylistically in footballing terms, which I think could be a real drawback to this move going ahead in the first place. I think conversely, if it had still been Sir Alex in charge, I think Ronaldo would be just be there in a flash. He'd be so encouraged to return and play for Sir Alex, but of course we're not living in that world right now. It's certainly not the case. So yeah, I think that could be a really major drawback. So both his relationship with Mourinho and Mourinho's style, and yeah, like I say, I think that team morale could quickly diminish. Albeit initially, I think there'd be a massive buzz around the place if it were to obviously go ahead. And yeah, so I'm not altogether convinced by this proposed return, as I'm sure you're probably not either, but you might think otherwise. And if so, please leave your comments below.